Happy bonfire night. No Farage to barrage tonight, but you can stump the Steyn. Shoot me a question. GBviews at gbnews.uk. We have had some reactions to our top story about the migrant situation, and in particular about Boris taking a private plane to have dinner with Charles Moore, my old editor Charles Moore, my old editor Boris. Tom King says the PM and other leading people in the world need to travel at speed because that's their job. You calling them out for doing that while sat on your bottom in the studio is pathetic. You know something, Tom? The reintroduction of serfdom might actually solve some of the problems you're worried about. That would enable Tsar Boris to go travelling around in luxury and at speed, while you just labour below of no consequence. You know something? The former Prime Minister of Australia, Tony Abbott, flew coach from Sydney, economy class, from Sydney on Qantas to his ski vacation a couple of years ago. He was in row 58D, and the guy next to him was taking some cell phone footage and said, I haven't had a moment's... That's a long flight, Sydney to the Swiss Alps. And he was able to travel economy to do that. There is no reason other than your craven posture, Tom King, that Boris Johnson or John Kerry or any of these other people need to go around on private jets. And it just means that Boris is going to become even more disconnected from you, Tom King, than he is at the moment. Tolly Boy says there will be a lot more Rotherhams with all these thousands of young migrant men seeking female company. I'm surprised more women can't see the pending danger to them. That's the sentimentalisation of immigration. We don't look on it as a rational public policy whereby immigration is meant to benefit the people who are already here. We just think, oh, isn't it nice? There's all these nice strapping young men washing up on the shores of Folkestone, and what could possibly go wrong with that? Douglas Murray is the international best-selling author of The Strange Death of Europe and The Madness of Crowds, both of which are cracking reads. It's always great to see you, Douglas. I think just going back to the first time I met you was at a conference not long after 9/11. I think you were just down from Oxford. I think that's how they say it. And at that time, I did my usual, the glass is 15/16 empty routine. And you were the optimist, Douglas. Are you still optimistic, having written The Strange Death of Europe and The Madness of Crowds?
First of all, it's great to be with you, Mark. A huge pleasure and an honour. And by the way, I can top your comment. I just guffawing here in the studio about what you said to your listener, Tom. I can cap that. I've actually flown economy with Tony Abbott. I know he flies economy, so there I can back up your story. You got a source here.
I can't think of anything worse than a long-haul flight sitting between you and Tony Abbott, wedged up in an economy class seat. But you're right. That's the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the way
certain politicians travel. You know, it's a strange American and now increasingly British thing that we have this sort of presidential style of travelling around. As for the optimism, pessimism, half glass full thing, it changes, doesn't it? I mean, depending on, first of all, who's in power, who's in charge, and secondly, on private acts of courage. One of the things that stunned me in recent years and was so depressing that led me to write about The Strange Death of Europe was this situation, which nobody knows better about than you, in which everybody could see things happening and nobody was meant to say anything about it, let alone, well, certainly not to say anything that was objecting to what was going on. In the 2015 migrant crisis, which we're seeing as a little echo of now still in the south coast of England. In the 2015 crisis, you were only meant to say, hurrah, look at how many people have arrived, and never look at it in the other end of that. And that's the same in question after question in our era. The things you've been talking about on the programme this week, these are all examples of things that we've been told there's only one thing we're meant to think about them, and you've got to just parrot that thing. And people are terrified about objecting. They're terrified of saying, aren't there any downsides to this even? So there's a lot long answer to your question, but the answer is I always become optimistic again when I see even one person standing up. And that doesn't have to be a famous person. It doesn't have to be somebody on a private jet jetting off to a COP28, 32 or any other meeting. Right. It can just be any individual in society. Recently there was an academic. There's an academic in England who's been very brave. That just gives me hope.
Right. So if you have, well, that's how we used to think about it, that all you need is one man or woman with courage, cis woman with courage, standing up, and then others will follow them, and you will then have a genuine back and forth. I sense that actually something is different is happening, and that on one issue after another, people are just falling silent because to them it's more trouble. Why take the hit to your career for expressing an honest view? We've seen J.K. Rowling in the UK, and we've seen Margaret Atwood in Canada, but they are the two most successful novelists of their respective societies. J.K. Rowling is one of the wealthiest women on the planet. I mean, do you really have to be at that level to withstand the heat now?
It's one way to withstand the heat is to be mega rich. That's certainly one way through. But I'm not sure that that's necessary these days, because figures like the academic I just mentioned, Kathleen Stock, she's a professor of logic, she has just been sticking to her ground, which is that chromosomes exist and that they matter. And it's true you have to walk through a certain amount of fire sometimes, but I really encourage people to do that, whatever their role. First of all, because it's the right thing to do. Secondly, because quite often it doesn't require as much bravery as is sometimes said. Thirdly, because you'll find much better friends and a much better reception committee on the other side. Who wants, this is a really important point, who wants to be just another person kowtowing to the boring consensus of your time with all of the sort of pathetic, cowardly people who just keep parroting what they're told? Who would want to be in that group? Much, much more fun on the other side of that, when you've walked through that, when you say what you see in the world, when you're honest with yourself and with others, you find a much merrier gang of people. They're all the people you'd want to be with anyway. I mean, I hate to make the comparison, but it's a bit like the old thing when the smoking ban came in. It was more fun on the curbside with the smokers than it was inside,
Well, you say that, Douglas, but isn't it the case? So we've just seen this extraordinary thing: representatives of 180 nations all gathering in Glasgow to say and apparently think exactly the same thing, and they're all and even Her Majesty the Queen, God bless her, whose remarks I thought were a constitutional abomination. And I see have driven prominent Australians and Canadians to announce that they're now Republicans. But even Her Majesty the Queen just says, I just want to think the same thing about the climate as everybody else does, as all these 180 other nations are. We're all going to say the same thing and be thrilled for 2 weeks by all thinking alike.
Yes. Well, I mean, that unbelievably wasteful exercise in Glasgow is just another example of it. I feel sorry for the Queen having to release such a statement. Whether she believes it or not, I don't know. But you're right. I mean, it's terrible that people sort of think there's only one thing they can say about this. If the world leader, I mean, I'm so fed up, as I'm sure most people are, with these ridiculous climate summits. Send for the actors. Great, Leonardo DiCaprio's arrived. Now we can get down to business. Send for the school truant from Scandinavia. Great, now we're going to solve some global problems. And the ridiculous ramping up of the rhetoric ever. This time, I mean, like you, I mean, we've all heard for years being told we've got 10 years left till we all burn to death, or we've got 20 years left till we all drown. And now Boris Johnson this week really upped the ante and gave the British taxpayer our dues by telling us we've got 1 minute left. I'm sorry, at that point I think most people just turn over the channel. If the COP26 world leaders were serious, they would have got on the stage this week and they'd have talked about things that they're going to do in terms of new technologies which would change this. They didn't focus on that. They did the same thing they always do. They tried to terrify the public some more in a direction which I think the public is rather dubious about, with good reason.
Well, let me, since you brought up this, we've only got 10 years to save the planet. I'm not a big fan of the Prince of Wales, but a few years back, he actually was more specific, and I think he said we have 8 years and 2 months to save the planet. And
Right.
He also around that time said that the red squirrel was going to be extinct. I think it was due to be extinct in 2016. Yeah. I saw a red squirrel outside my house this morning. So the Prince of Wales was wrong on that. How do these guys get away with it? How he can't even get the extinction of the red squirrel right. Why should he know the death of the planet?
Yeah, when St. John the Divine was writing the Apocalypse, I bet he never guessed that the grey squirrel would be the sign of Armageddon. He didn't see that one coming. We all shriek in terror every time we see a grey squirrel from now on. It is so ludicrous, isn't it? Because yeah, they've been doing this for years, and as I say, I mean, it's really striking that there's just the gap between the politicians and the public. The rhetoric is unbelievable. Let me give you a very quick example. I'm in the United States at the moment. President Joe Biden has promised that America's going to go basically entirely very nearly carbon neutral by 2050. I mean, no one's going to be around remembering that in 2050 any more than they're going to remember Prime Minister
Joe
Modi
Biden's
in India promising that India's going to be. Well, Prime Minister Modi says India in 2070 will be carbon neutral. I'm sure we'll all be around to hold him to that promise, and I'm sure there's a court we can take. But there's a serious point here, which is that Joe Biden says that they're going to go carbon neutral in America by 2050. That's going to cost every American household something like $11,000 a year. You know how much the American public have said they're willing to pay per year for this? $24. $24, not $11,000. Nobody's volunteering $11,000 per household, but everyone just agrees. Everyone says, we'll go along with the rhetoric. I don't see why we should.
Yeah, for 3 macchiatos. Thank you. That's about 3 macchiatos with butterscotch topping and whipped cream. $24.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.